beautiful souls, listeners, commenters, knowers of things. Hmm. It's so interesting to know that a fairly significant portion of my viewers are those of you who have the bigger channels. And it's fun because I know as I listen to the downloads that you guys put out on your channels that you are listening. I know I'm not the only one speaking many of these messages either, so it's interesting. Just interesting. So, I'm taking a moment, like I said that I would. If you watched my video yesterday about the 40 days and 40 nights, the It Begins. And there's a lot of things happening that in former versions of myself, former chapters of my life, would have absolutely freaked me out. And I'm sitting here knowing a large part of what I want to talk about. That my guides are like, definitely talk about that. And I feel this like bemused energy about it, like looking back at parts of my life. Hello, 69 babe girl. Beautiful too. But I'm thinking about how, like, everything going on right now, at least to some degree, I am prepared for. Like, and it feels like that's a part of this Venus and Capricorn energy. And my Venus, my natal Venus placement is in Capricorn, so maybe I am the best suited to share this information with you. I'm not sure how it will benefit you. I'm not very good at sympathy pleas for like begging for donations and stuff like that, but I'm going to ask kindly anybody. The description box below. My son and I are trying to avoid having to stay in the car, mostly because he has his emotional support bird with him that he rescued, and we're, yeah, it's it's important. Um, so yeah, I'm just gonna take this moment because I've just applied at several more jobs. I've been told that maybe, like a really strong, really good maybe, like she really wanted to hire me right then and there. But what I was told was maybe by the second week in January. It's like, I mean, I feel good. Like I've walked into several jobs and they've been like, wow, we want to hire you right now. But we just hired 2 new people or 3 new people, which actually, I was thinking about it. I've been a hiring manager. I've worked in all sorts of different food environments, customer service environments, things like that. And I actually know that that's not a bad sign. For one thing, hiring so many people, and at the places that I've been looking at, there's a fair amount of turnover. It's not a ton of turnover, which I like, because you don't want to look for a job where there's a lot of turnover. That means there's going to be a lot of stress. Like, and any job has a certain amount of stress, but if they have very high turnover, you're probably better off looking elsewhere. But I know that the area that I'm in, and I know the typical rate of turnover, and I know that I'm doing a good job. I'm being persistent. I'm in a good, like, locale demographic wise for my approach to getting jobs and stuff. And I know that I'm a shoo-in for those jobs, and that they are definitely like, I'm not exaggerating at all when they're like, wow, we really want to hire you right now. You know what I mean? Like, especially the managers who don't get control over hiring. But typically those managers are the ones that have a big influence, though. And usually when you have, like, when a kitchen in particular will hire like 2 or 3 new people, like, they'll give them full shots and whatnot. But I mean, maybe 2 of the 3 will remain. There's, and it's not even like, half the time it's not even the kitchen. It's like the environment between people, and how thick is your skin and things like that. And can you have a good time in a high stress situation, things like that. Um, and so I'm kind of in this space to where I'm like, I'm really glad I have so much experience in the industry that, like, being told not right now is not like, oh, well, that's horrible. Like, I mean, the timing, especially considering we barely have one more night in the room that we're in, is, it's like, I would like something more right now, though I also know through my life experiences that I like, yes, I've been open to any job and I've been going into like sometimes even just random places, but I know my body, I know my temperament, I know my skills, I know the kind of space that I could be in at least for as long as possible considering my osteoarthritis. I know what feels right. Like I'm not going to places unintelligently because like although that would seem like a logical thing to do in a situation like this, that is another way that one can also find themselves in trouble. Is like not thinking thoughtfully about jobs that are being applied for. And like areas and commutes and things like that, especially when you need to be careful with resources, right? And you know what's funny is like that's what leads me to what spirits like go ahead and talk about that. So it's funny, it has to do with my DM Rudy, and I keep thinking about doing another like love letters to Cabot thing, but I'm like, no, I said I was going to be done with that. I had my moment. And also like the love letters to Cabot thing were mostly me talking about me, which I mean, generally, even when we're talking about other people, we are typically talking about ourselves. That's an important thing to remember as you become an adult. um, and especially as you become a light worker. Though like I feel this like incredible gratitude towards him, and there was like this thought in my head of like people just don't understand, like, and I'm thinking mostly of people like what I don't get is like people that have known him far longer than I have, and like I've watched them all interact with each other, and I know that I'm not crazy. I mean, my therapist has thoroughly said multiple times that I am very, very sane. In fact, he says I'm the person that tells him why the caged bird sings, which is like his reference of like I'm very stable and I'm very, very, very sane, and somehow I have been put in the middle of circusry. And like but the irony is because I've had a life of circusry around pirates and potatoes, I'm not destabilized by being in unstable situations, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, and because I've done enough work on myself and worked on me stuff and stayed in my lane in that way, like, I'm also able to navigate said unstable situations without going backwards into the situations that I left behind, that I released. You know what I mean? Like, it's an interesting balance, and I keep thinking back to when I met my DM Rudy, and like I was 15 at the time. I was trying to get emancipated. I was trying to get away. Like I want to be on my own. I want to work a job. I want to have my own space where there's no horde in it and it's just me and maybe Rudy. Like I would have done that. Ironically, he ended up getting a space and almost asked me to move in, but he was so used to women just moving themselves in that I think he was hoping that I would like telepathically pick it up. Like he kind of communicated that like decades later. He just hoped I'd just do like everyone else, but I'd never been like everybody else. But you know, I keep thinking about it. It's funny, like my time between like 15 and 18 and a half, I pretty much was homeless. Like, it's funny. It wasn't homeless as in, like, I didn't have a house to be at. Like, the house with my family was packed, both full of stuff and people. And, like, but like I felt better being away from there, and I was never like the type to go out. Like I did some drinking as a teenager, but I didn't really like drinking because like I didn't like not having full control over my own judgment and things like that. So, and for a while I was the dare kid, like, no, don't hurt yourself. And I'm still kind of that person. Like I'm not judgmental about stuff at all, but I care about your body. Like I care about your mind, and I like to interact with your sober mind. It's so much more interesting than a drunk or high mind. That's all I'm saying. Um, in any case, that's so funny. I just noticed in my mirror on the fence behind me, there is like a little mural thing of a big honeybee and a rose, and it's like going up to smell the rose, right? So, anyways, as I've been going place to place today, and then thinking about, okay, what are my options right now? Like, I did finally. Well, I was gonna say at first I was unable to reach people that previously had said like we could come stay with them for a few days, or they might have other resources and stuff. And I just thought, try them again anyways. And they're like, their hearts are in the right place, so they're definitely in questionable stability situations. And like, if it's just me, I mean, look at my Wickedly Divine Feminine tour where I went wherever, like on my own, I could do a lot of things. I know how to stay out of trouble. I know how to be in a potentially troublesome moment without getting into trouble, though. Like, and it's funny, my 16-year-old is very. I mean, he's quiet. He's mature. I tell him often he's in charge because he's the most mature, um, and like he's a good kid too, though it's just like a lack of experience. And like, because we have his emotional support bird, that's a different element. Like, I know I could do different things with him. It's funny, I feel like in many ways it's Spirit's cosmic joke, because like giving giving their dad, my DM, our youngest son, because I knew that things were shifting and I couldn't do both of the kids, like at least at first, emotionally, especially because our youngest son is a Leo Scorpio, and we just like we're like we would make a bigger fire. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, no, no. Go with your dad who has a water sign. Help him warm his water up, because he's being a cold, grumpy, curmudgeonly butt person right now, and I don't like that. And it's not helpful. But it's funny because I still, we have Squeak, and I love Squeak. That's Eamon's bird. I'm so proud of him for rescuing him. Though when I think about it, it's a similar challenge. Like, the only difference is, like, my Joey is 10, and like I could easily say, hey, we have to be careful of noise around here because we're in a hotel or things like that, and he would get it. It's hard to look at a 30-year-old cockatiel and be like, hey, you're gonna have to shut up for a while. I'm not saying that. It'll be like, you gotta be quiet for a little while. You gotta let us work some things out, or you gotta somehow keep a little birdie heater in your cage if we gotta be in the car, because I only have so much gas. You know, like there's no way to do that. I actually am grateful for the challenge, though. I mean, like, I tell my kiddo, I'm like, you know what, I'm grateful for you to be here. We were attempting to see if he could at least temporarily stay with his dad, even though he would have to like fight and argue with the karmic and weird shit like that. But like, I was like, even without that, like, it's not a, it's actually more trying to provide some amount of like regularity for him, because he's on the spectrum too. And it's like, even if it's a cruddy regularity for a little while, at least I know that you're there, and I know that even though your dad might be a jerk with his words to a certain degree, he will protect you and make sure you have at least enough food and stuff. And like, that doesn't mean that I just disappear. It's less instability on that end, right? But the karmic doesn't want that. Like, anything that has to do with me, just the fact that I exist is a problem for her. And that's okay. It's just like, looking at the different ways to handle this. It's funny because I think back to when I met my DM, and he wasn't like, I didn't suddenly start being like kind of living a vagrant lifestyle because of him. It's like I met him largely because I'd already kind of entered into that space. Like, I wanted to, shoot, even by 14, I was like ready. I was like, I want to learn the world so that I can figure out how to make a path for myself that is stable and fun and like abundance, so that I don't have to go backwards into things. And like, I had, of course, I was very, very codependent at the time, conditioned, born and conditioned, right? And so I had other teens, like younger and older than me, that were often like, I was thinking about the contrast earlier. So one of the memories of the story of us, me and my DM, is like, there used to be this thriftway. I think it was called Central Market before that. And then, yeah, then it turned into thriftway. We were in Shoreline. And like, this was before like I'm gonna say the other teens I used to rescue really started like getting into worlds of like, whoa, where are you going and why are you putting yourself in that much danger? And should I be helping you or not? In any case, there was some times that we're like we were short of money. We wanted smokes and usually pizza, and like just enough to just relax for the day, you know. And it didn't require that much back then. Maybe like $20. You could get a couple of bus rides for a couple of people, some pizza, some smokes, a couple of drinks. Like it's pretty comfortable, right? And some of the girls that I'm just gonna call them the girls, they decided to start panhandling, and they were doing it with like very, oh, how do you call it, like they get their bosoms all set up and do their makeup and whatnot and go and like look for the cute gentleman or the young gentleman or the old gentleman to be like, do you have a few dollars that I can have? I'm really hungry. You know what I mean? Like they'd really ham it up and go for it. And if they could find somebody that would also be able to party later, like they were very fond of doing that sort of thing. Now, I don't know if it's apparent or not, but that's not like I could do that, but that is not my thing. And like even being super hungry or even being in a space where I'm like I really really want a cigarette, like any of that, I'm not likely to go up and be like, "Hey there. Any chance you want to give me $20 so I can eat and have a pack of smokes?" Like, I don't know. It's just not like I suppose I could do that. Maybe I will at some point in my life just to see if I can do it, though. Like, first of all, being in that energy to manipulate someone, not my thing. But second of all, like, I didn't like the idea. It's funny. I'm very not happy with the government right now, but I'm a Capricorn, so I don't hate all government. And like I don't hate all rules or laws or things like that. Sometimes they actually make life easier to navigate and stuff. So like panhandling was also illegal, and we watched, like, me and my DM actually, like, both of us held back from like participating for a while. We just watched them do it. And like they would get in trouble by the store people here and there. Then sometimes they would try to go steal something, then they'd get in trouble that way. And then they'd like try a different side of the store, and then they'd try in the parking lot. And I remember like we were sitting there thinking, we had another friend occasionally, well, I had two other friends on occasion that we talked to it about, like, how can we do something similar to get like donations from people without panhandling and without like that weird energy of like either, I mean, there's nothing really wrong with asking for money when you need money. I was gonna say about begging for money, but at the time, that's the way we were looking at it too. I mean, who, like, I trained myself over time, especially working in Seattle, to not look at someone asking for money as like a beggar or having a, the stigma attached. But I acknowledged that at the time I hadn't dealt with that, so like I could see why the memory in my mind is, oh, I don't want to be a beggar. You know what I mean? Like that did not seem good. And so we thought of different ways, and one of the most common ways was simply that he would pull out his guitar. He had some songs, one of them was Songs for $1, and like I would then like, what do you call it? It's like the barker outside a comedy club or at like a carnival, and be like, "Hey, would you like to have him play a song for you? Any song at all that you can think of." And to this day, like um one of our favorite memories of that was the day that the lady, like, she was testing us, and she said, "How about Stairway to Heaven?" And like we already started playing it, like, no, like right there on his acoustic, blonde acoustic, and she was like, "What?" I like, you could tell she expected that to be one song that nobody could play like right there without looking it up. Like she was already ready to walk away, and just her whole demeanor changed. I'm pretty positive she gave us like $20 too. Like it was, and Rudy played it the whole time. She was like torn between, do I go inside and do my shopping or do I sit here and listen to him beautifully playing it? He didn't sing with it, and not much anyways. At that time he was still very very shy about singing in front of other people. He got better over time. That's such a great thing to feel like I can see in the memories of us, like seeing him go from being like can only sing in front of other people when drunk sometimes, to like singing in the car, to like I took him to a show at the lab so he could do it in front of his mom and stuff. Like it's great. But like I think about that back then, and I think about like, I know he still gets adorably embarrassed about those chapters in his life, and I understand a fair amount of that. But like when I look back at that experience, and I think about the situation we're in now, I'm like, wow, isn't it strange that like that stuff happened, and now I am oddly prepared for going through similar experiences that I didn't necessarily expect to be going through, but I have enough experience to figure them out. Like right now, the position I'm in more so is like I'm waiting for other people to do people-y things. Like it's, the holiday season. So between Christmas and New Year's, like agencies tend to slow down. There's not as much assistance. People are like they're busy, and then they're also busy. And usually people are far more interested in like repeating karmic loops with family stuff, or this is the one time of year they get pleasant family experiences. So either or, they tend to be pulled into that stuff. And so like the focus on, can you help us find a place? Can you do this and that? And can you put, people tend to run with less money because they spend a lot on gifts and stuff like that. And so like, and then the other part is like just waiting for jobs. Like I said in the beginning, like a lot of the places I went to, like if I had one of those little spy cams to like put on my buttons, like it's so fulfilling to like talk to someone and like they would hire you on the spot if they hadn't just hired a few other people. And like I know the different like excuses too that a lot of especially smaller kitchens will have when they're like they just don't want to hurt your feelings and stuff like that. But like no, like yeah, I know the jobs are mine. The question is which one and how long will it take to get it, and how often do I need to visit and try to get in touch with an owner or somebody else. And like will the a lot of times the owners are a little bit removed from the actual like business life. So like it's a high compliment if you have like kitchen staff or like managers or bartenders that are there a lot. Like if they're in a space where they're like, we want you, we need you, yes please, like that is a high compliment, and that means that that place needs you. That does not necessarily mean that the owners are either one in a space of thinking about needing you, or two that they understand the value that you can bring in the way that a manager or a cook or a chef or somebody can know that you bring value. You know what I mean? So it's like, how often, actually now I think about it, the last place I just stopped in at, I just talked to the owner, and she was one of the ones that was like she told me second week of January. And it's like, and it's not like a confirmed like here, sign all your paperwork kind of stuff, but it's like it was close to that. I could tell that she has a couple of other resumes that I don't know if they're like very qualified or not, or maybe it's people that she knows. Like it seemed like there was something more to it. Like I would say yes right now and get you going, but I'm going to reserve the boundary, which is fine. But then, like I'm saying, it's waiting for people to do people-y things. You know what I mean? And like then waiting for the applications of like the low income stuff that I put in and doing things like that. And when I think back, when I think about what I know in the cycles of people and the energy cycles, and what I know of the astrology and of my own experiences going through similar stuff like this before I had kids, and then also while having kids, like I know that it's sort of it's not a waiting game per se, especially when you're in a housing crisis type situation and you're looking for more immediate work. Like there's always something you can be doing. It's just you know what it reminds me of, like what is it, dual survival with Cody Lundin. It's like you want to look at the ratio between how much are you expending to get the resource you want, whether it's food or firewood for shelter or water or filtering water or things like that, or like hunting or things like that. Like how much yield do you get for the effort you put out? Like that's how you look at it. And a lot of that stuff I learned early on. Early on. Probably even earlier than 13. I want to say 11 or 12. And I already had to learn how to like get along in those situations from my early sitter and stuff like that too. So like there are some times when you're doing something kind of like waiting. It's not waiting. I just don't have a better word for it. And expecting, and it kind of anticipate, but I think expecting is a better vibration of energy. You're expectant, right? So, but it's funny to think back at like at the point that I met my DM. I mean, he had several cars around what used to be a fairly small-ish city. It wasn't as small as the city that I'm in right now, let's say that. And it wasn't a small town, but it was like a portion of Seattle that had annexed itself off, even because it's like we're different and we're smaller and we don't want to join in the big stuff like that. And like he had different vehicles in different places. It wasn't necessarily intentional. It was like trying to get one that could keep him warm at night, and so he could go back and forth to see his daughter, and then like something would happen to it, and like he'd have to park it somewhere to try to fix it. And like I remember him going back and forth to different vehicles, and he kept going. Like, and I remember too, because like he told me that like the day that I met him, like the night before, was a really crushing night, and like he did try to drink himself out of it, though something clicked, I guess, after we met. Like he didn't tell me that night, it was years later, but like I know when I met him something clicked. He did not want to get like a typical 9 to 5 job, which I totally understand, and I'm proud of him that he held to his own on that and got a job that he liked. I mean, he's been doing the same work now for almost 20 years, you know what I mean? And that's funny. A bus just passed by that said, "Good people make simple mistakes." It's very true. Very, very true. Anyway, so, like, I looked at it like, we always had difference of opinion on it, because I'm like, whether you intended to do it or not, and whether society has stigmas on homelessness or the situation you were in with your marriage, any of that stuff, I think it's quite brilliant that you kept going like he did. Like he would go from one car to another until like, I mean, he would go and save up pennies, he would get cans, he would do whatever he could to get enough to fix a car, to sell it, so that he had some cash to get to the next space. And he took very little for himself. Sometimes he'd stay on a couch, sometimes he'd do some things like that, but otherwise he kept going. Like I can tell you how many times I may have been being driven somewhere by my dad, or walking across the street in the other place, or on the other side of busy roads, and seeing him like carrying a car battery like up and down the hills, because they weren't ever the auto parts stores, there was only a few of them, or back and forth with a starter. And then he would go back and forth like helping other friends, and he was not great about advocating for what he deserved to get in terms of being paid for stuff, which I also understand. And so, like, I mean, he would make money in other ways and be able to get it. It wasn't as much as he should have asked for or that he deserved, but it was enough to keep him going. And he found different ways to stay warm. And then, I mean, I still remember the times, like, being that I wasn't an adult yet, and that I had some odd resource, like unexpected resources, that I was able to offer him some nurturing. And I knew it was like, it's funny, like he knew that he deserved it, but it was like, what? Someone who wants to like just offer me a space to be me? They want to hear about more than just gossip and like victimy stuff. Like they want to know me, they want to feed me. They want to, which is cancery thing. But I keep thinking about, though, like, I mean, I learned a lot from like chasing around and rescuing other people, and like what not to do and what not to get into and things like that. And I learned a fair amount about the different adults, because there are all sorts of types of adults. I learned a lot about that, like different ways to do things, not to do things, how to, like, I don't know, kind of pick yourself up from your bootstraps. So I learned more of that from my experiences with my DM, like watching him figure it out, like, hitting rock bottom, climbing up, and then falling back down, and then get back up, and falling back down, get back up, and get back up. And it kind of makes me laugh, because by the time we got into an actual relationship, which was like 4.5-ish years after we met and had interacted with all these times, like, it's funny because I can remember of all the years that he watched me do that, and I never had the vocabulary to tell him. He would always talk about how he admired that, Like I could fall off the horse and get up limping or whatever, or bleeding on one side, and still get back on that horse, or at least walk the horse somewhere, or I would do something. And I mean, I knew at the time that he was such a large inspiration. I just, for one, I was busy doing things, and two, I wasn't sure how to communicate it. Like, and it feels like now it's one of those spaces to where, like, I am very bemused because, like, bemused, I think amused is, I don't, it's like, it's not quite amused, but bemused sounds like confused, and I don't think that's quite the right word. I don't know. I'm grateful because I'm like thinking, because of his journey, as like zigzag and cabot traily as it was, I learned about getting through a part of life that a lot of people don't have like an experience of anyone else doing, and certainly not doing in a honorable way, or at least as honorable as one is capable of in certain situations and stuff like that. And it's funny, the odd thought that came into my mind is like, there were many times when we weren't connected. Like, there wasn't cell phones at the time. It was still kind of a pager sort of time. So like there were plenty of times we didn't see each other, we didn't talk, and like because of the circumstances, there were no plans to reconnect. And then we would like run into each other at like a 7-Eleven or a different, like a place that it wasn't a place that we normally frequented, and he'd be sick. And it would always be like a few weeks later that, like, after hanging out with me and being around with me, that he would feel better and he would go back into, go back into the flaming room. You know what I mean? Like, just so him. But what I was just thinking of is, look at that. That's one of the ways that a lot of people indicate, is it a good relationship? Is it a healing relationship? And is it a twin flame relationship? But I'm also more admiring that it's like, you know what? Yeah, that I did do that for him, and that was weird. And I really needed to work on being more limiting with the energy that I give out. But like now, just the memories of that keep me going, and also like they make me feel proud that like I went through that stuff. Because now when I'm sitting here thinking, okay, like I've already talked to Eamon, my 16-year-old, like we might have like 2 or 3 days in the car. And I'm not fully sure what that's going to look like. Like, I think that I can do enough with DoorDash. Like, my transmission is having challenges shifting. I'm grateful for it though, because every time I have to reverse and I have a challenge with that, it reminds me to be gentle with the energy of the vehicle and myself, and that that's what the universe is doing, right? It's shifting, shifting, shifting. And sometimes you get a slow gear, sometimes you get a big gear, sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't work hardly at all, but it's still working, and it's always getting better and better. It's just, what's the momentum in the middle. But I told him, like, we might have some days in the car. I don't know. I'm not afraid of that though. At least not right now. I know enough about the wider circles of things. I know the energy that I've put out and into things. I know the people around us fairly well, and it's like I don't have like an expectation of it'll be this outcome by this day. I just know the way that the energies are flowing, and I know the logistics of the places and the people and the jobs and the money and things like that. So like it's temporary. You know what I mean? If something happens like that, it's temporary. And the worst thing we could do is like freak out about that sort of thing. Like, we're actually quite prepared. We've been doing little things here and there to prepare for if we had to be in that situation. And it's still not ideal. I mean, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And we'll actually do better to keep working on shifting energy in each moment while things work out, right? While things get better and better. And the funny thing is like when I get onto those stream of thoughts, I think about it too. Like, it's like the story of my life. Like the thing that I want will feel like it's like on too high of a shelf, so I need to find a ladder, or like it's hidden from view, so I know that I can have it, but it's not where I can see it. So it's like, how do you get the thing that is yours and that you can have and that you want when you can't see exactly where it is? Um, but it's all then it's like, change of perspective or think about something else for a while, or just wait till the door opens or the window opens or things like that, you know what I mean? Like, and I can look back at my experiences, especially with my DM, and go, you know what, I've actually experienced this happening a lot. And even in his own story, like I was joking with our eldest son because like Spirit told me a Spirit joke that was like, you should go and apply at a stereo shop. Like, go get, like, that's his job. So it'd be like, there are competing ones, and I've been looking around to see if there's one out here because I talked to somebody when I was in Lava, Idaho, about the potential of that. I know how to do basic ones, and I mean, you don't spend 15 years with someone who works and does, car stereo and audio and not know nothing about it. Like, I know the people, I know the environment, I know the way the business works, I know the money isn't too bad, and I know it would not be that hard on my body physically. And it's funny because my oldest son was just like, that would be such a boss move. That'd be such a flex. I'm like, I know, and that would be funny. So I don't know. I'm also keeping eyes peeled for that. But that's another thing though, is like thinking about it, like, I remember when he got that job, we hadn't seen each other in several years. I was with someone else, he was with someone, like, it was before I got pregnant with our oldest son and stuff, and like, actually, well, I was pregnant with him when I learned about the job. Let's put it that way. And I remember thinking good, and I remember hearing his story of how he got it. He got it kind of spitefully, like it was like spitefully, but also it was about self-respect. You know what I mean? Like, the people that he'd been around always had constant complaints about the kind of jobs that he would do. His wife, his first wife at the time, was like, "Go get a job." "No, I don't like that job. Quit that job." Like, it was all around the place. And he was like, "You know what? I'm picking a job that I like." And he had no experience in it. He had put radios in for everybody. Like, he was always the guy that had, but it certainly wasn't like professional experience. But I used to tell him even when I was younger, it's like, you don't need no experience. You just need the right attitude to go in and show them that you deserve to earn that experience. And like, he just did it, and like, he's been in it for a long time. And it's funny to think, considering like all the other factors, that like what my skills are and are not, and my temperament, things like that, I would actually do very well in that sort of environment. So like, I don't know, it feels like there are some of you that like are in situations where you definitely need to lean into some of your masculine energy, like action taking, or planning and things of that nature, creating stability. And it is often a good idea to look for the good in who you think is your divine masculine, to be able to find the good in your, everybody has masculine and feminine energy in them, and third gender energy. So like, think about what is the good there, what is the stable, what is the thing that gets things done, what is the thing that shifts energies, and look for that reflection in yourself. You don't need to like copy them, but like, I mean, what's funny is a lot of them are inspired by us. Like, they'll take from things that we do or do not do in temperament, in manner, and things like that. Like, the divine feminine wouldn't do that, she's got too much integrity, right? But like, we can also look at it and go, what would divine masculine do? And it's like the WWJD thing, but it'd be WWDMD. What would divine masculine do, right? And I almost want to rename it that, like, call it love. I called this one love because the song that kept coming into my head that was like, it's not going to stop playing in my head until I do this video, was that one from Hairspray that's like, without love, life, what is it? It's like a season with no summer without love. Life is like rock and roll without a drummer. You know what I mean? Like, and I was gonna put without love, but I was like, no, that's not it, because that song's about love. Like, it's about how great love is. And what came to mind was like, that's something that carries me through so much of this. And it actually brings me quite a bit of understanding, like, that, not that I didn't know it, but I didn't know it in this way, is like, I know that my DM meeting me carried him through those hard times in a very meaningful, significant way. Just the thought, you know what I mean, of somebody who believes in you, somebody who believes you, period. Somebody who would give you their last $5, somebody who would help you look for a job, somebody who would help you have a place to stay for a few weeks, somebody who would help you think things through, somebody who, like, even if they want you to make a different choice, they still love you for whatever choice you decide to make, even if it's silly, even if it goes backwards, or even if it's too far a leap forward for a sustainable leap. Like, it makes a difference. And it's funny, part of me wants to say, like, I know he is that for me also, though it's not. It's like an up level of that. Like, that's the cherry on top, that I know that he's rooting for me. I know he knows that I can do it. I know he believes me. I know that he's working on his end, regardless of what the 3D looks like. I know him well enough. I know energy well enough, and he's found little ways to communicate it in ways that only I would understand, that he is working on it. But it's actually sitting here going, wow, I have the self love to love myself through this, because I was on both sides of that. And, like, if not for my DM's, like, way of choosing little Cabot Trail circuses and stuff, I wouldn't be in this weird position to feel this way about myself. And, like, that is a kind of beautiful thing that I didn't. It's the pleasant surprise, right? Like, expect the unexpected in pleasant tense, right? All right, so I was waiting for a couple of hiring managers to be available in the space where I am. And I have a couple of places to go see if I can connect with some people I met months ago that might have more options. So I love you all. Thank you for listening. And I mean, I would love to know in the comments below what you get out of this content, because that's the more interesting thing to me right now. And also, thank you so much for any donations you can send our way. It really does help. And I don't know, Spirit keeps telling me I'm going to be able to do something big and important for the world, and I'm excited for that. Like, it's not a requirement for me, though I hope so. I know a lot of people could use upliftment in their hearts, and somebody to believe in them. Maybe I can do something like that. Until the clarity finds its way to me and to you, I love you all. I'll see you in the next video.